We ready to bring Dean in?
I believe so.
Let's bring in Dean Blandino, master of all things officiating. Dean, how's it going, man? Welcome back.
I'm good. I just want to know, do I need to close my shades here? Do I need to?
If you
is
can
the
play
lighting
through
okay?
it, you know where the sun is in your own home.
I
You
know.
have home
See,
field advantage.
I prepare for this. I know the time. I've got it all covered. I just want to make sure Sam's okay.
You know roughly a year in advance. Jerry keeps saying that. You understand where the sun's going to be at any given moment.
Exactly.
So, are they allowed to change the blinds on the fly? Because Arizona a couple of weeks ago, right? They had to shut the roof of the stadium because it started hailstones down. Took 10 minutes or whatever. Are you allowed as a team with a home field to actually manipulate that and say the blinds are going to be closed when we have the ball? They're not going to be closed when you have the ball.
No. So you make those decisions like roof open, roof closed, 90 minutes prior to the game, and then if there is a weather issue where you have to close the roof, that would go through the league. It would have to take place typically at halftime, those types of things. So you couldn't just, hey, they're looking in the sun, let's keep it open, and then when we're looking in the sun, we'll close it. You couldn't do that.
Okay. So they would have to determine, before the game, we've decided we're going to actually use the blinds this time and not everybody's going to get blinded?
Yeah, but I don't think that's ever going to happen.
No.
Listening to Jerry.
Clearly.
It was meant, I read that he said it was meant to have the feel of an outdoor stadium.
Yeah.
And so that's,
He likes it. I mean, he likes the look of the sunlight streaming in, and if it happens to cost him the retinas of his star wide receiver from time to time, that's just a sacrifice worth making for aesthetics. That's Jerry's position.
It's aesthetically pleasing to watch CeeDee Lamb lose
and
in the sun.
I do know that teams that go in there, they study that. Coin toss decisions are that's a factor. Late afternoon game. Are we going to be looking in the sun? That's definitely a factor. I know visiting teams have talked about that.
I would love to see somebody create, a supercut highlight video of the number of times it's cost plays, because just anecdotally in my brain, I can think of 4 or 5 times where it's directly cost the Cowboys plays. I can think of one where it's cost the opposition. So Jerry's point is it's an equal thing. I don't think it has been so far. I think it's genuinely cost the Cowboys more than it's cost their opponents.
But
yeah, and they're obviously playing there 8 or 9 times a year, so
right.
So they're gonna have more opportunities to be affected.
So Dean, we've seen a couple late game face masks, Thursday night football in particular. Of course, everything gets blown up when it's in prime time. How do we solve this? How do we solve missing face masks in prime time?
Well, I think you start with, okay, let's try to get it right on the field. Is there something we're not doing? Is it positioning? Is it mechanics? So you're always going to start there, and then the conversation then shifts to, okay, instant replay, right? Do we need to start looking at these types of calls? And I think you look at the Sam Darnold play from a couple of weeks ago in the end zone and some others where it would be pretty obvious that it was a face mask and replay can come in. I think there are going to be plays where it's not so obvious, and you're still talking about judgment, and it's an official's judgment. Now you're giving it to somebody upstairs. Yes, they have video, they have more resources, but you're never going to get away from the human element. You're never going to get away from judgment. I do think now with all the cameras and everything that we've got, and it is more seamless to be able to communicate from the booth or from the command center in New York to the field. I think they got to look at that. Is it the last 2 minutes? Is it egregious? Is it something? I think they're going to look at it, but the competition committee has always taken a more measured approach. There's never been a situation where replay could create a foul other than that defensive offensive pass interference debacle that we had in 2019. I don't know. We'll see. But I think it's gonna if we get a play in a playoff game, a championship game, the Super Bowl, I think you could see a rule change. If the playoffs go well, everybody kind of tends to forget a little bit about week 8 of the regular season, and maybe we don't. It's going to be interesting.
Is that pass interference sort of experiment really the holdup? Because I just can't see a particularly strong argument for not correcting obviously egregious blown calls because of well, replay can't create a foul where none exists. But that's the whole purpose of replay, is they missed something, so let's help them fix it, right? No, none of the officials on the field are happy with the outcome of that play where, oh no, neither one of us saw this face mask and now the game has completely changed because of it. The whole purpose is there's somebody watching that in New York who can hit a button and say, hey, you might want to take a look at this, you missed it.
Yeah, and I don't think the 2019 experience should prevent that from happening. I just don't think pass interference is the place to start. I think
Right.
I think you do start with player safety. You do start with hits to the head neck area, face masks, those types of things, where there are some objective elements that replay can help with. Nobody, the officials are top of that list. They don't want a game being decided on a missed call or an incorrect call. So to be able to have somebody with the video to be able to communicate that, I think that would be a good thing. You've got to keep it limited. I don't think anybody wants or even understands what would happen if we're just re-officiating from the booth every play. That would be, I think, catastrophic for the game. But to have it limited and for significant situations where it's obvious, I think that makes sense. And I think the committee has to look at that.
To just remind people too, the 2019 instant replay on pass interference experiment, that became like, it made sense in practice because you watch all these replays like, man, they missed pass interference. But we got to the point where they started challenging. There was how many offensive pass interference, pick plays. It was very like ticky tack, little contact pass interference calls. It was awful. And so the face mask thing, like the Darnold one, is blatant, right? Like I was watching the game, wanting to see one final drive as a fan, and we lost that because they missed a face mask, which is egregious. Do you worry about getting to like, oh, the pinky barely rubbed up against the face mask, we got to call that 15 yards versus the whole like he tugged at his face?
That's the concern, because as obvious as Darnold one, there's going to be one that's not as obvious, right?
Yeah.
Now we're looking at it and we're debating it, and either way, people are going to be upset. Either you make it a face mask or you don't. I still think if you can have a mechanism in place to prevent the Darnold play, then you live with the kind of the collateral damage, right? You try to mitigate it, but you live with it, because again, you can't, right? Joe Burrow 2-point try. We've got two missed calls on that play, and the Bengals should have had another chance at a game winning or taking the lead late in the game with a 2-point try, and they didn't get that opportunity. So I think if you have resources and technology in place, then I think the league has to really consider it.
You mentioned that the playoffs is the kind of thing that can spur action, right? Where a really bad miscall or mistake officiating can create enough of a furore that they go, okay, we got to fix this. Is the same thing true for, because these have been on primetime island games, which sort of makes it even more blatant and egregious. Like everybody is watching this one game. It's not buried somewhere at a 1 p.m. slate where there's 9 other games taking place. These are happening and determining primetime island games. Is that enough to make them go, we can't keep having these games decided by these calls?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. When I was in the officiating department, I said, I know there's going to be plays, and we're not going to be perfect. Give me those plays 1 o'clock Sunday, right? Don't put them in prime time, because you do have more eyeballs. You do get a greater outcry. And there are people in the league office, and look, I get it. Like when something goes wrong on prime time, they see that, they react to that. The public, the league takes the fans and their perspective very seriously. Those are your paying customers. And if they're not happy, then you've got to consider that and make sure that they are happy and they're not walking away from games with a kind of a bad taste in their mouth. So that's absolutely, primetime games are it's more under the microscope, it's magnified more. And it can be a driver for change, but ultimately, it really comes down to the playoffs and that we saw it, right? The pass interference rule. The only reason we had that pass interference rule because of one play in the NFC Championship game, right? So if that happens, I think that's ultimately the biggest impetus. And sometimes regular season, people tend to kind of forget what happened, like I said earlier, during week 8.
Common sense rule, man. Those obvious Saints Rams pass interference, Sam Darnold face mask, if there was just a way to offset those, right? That's the biggest thing.
Have there ever been occasions where the NFL has kind of fudged the protocols? Because since it's been connected to New York, it's felt like there have been plays where, something changed when the officials huddled up, right? And sometimes that happens, right? They just get together and one guy they change the call. But there have definitely been plays where it felt like some new information came to light, whether it was a replay that suddenly is ahead of them on the stadium or somebody in their ear. Have the NFL ever fudged that protocol? Because that would feel like a kind of easy way around it. Even if the competition committee is an off-season thing, somebody just get on the phone and say, hey, Sam Darnold had his head wrenched off in the end zone, right? That doesn't seem hard.
Someone drop a flag so we could legally talk about this.
No doubt that has happened. There's no question that has happened. And I'll tell you this from my own experience. And I'm at the Super Bowl. I'm in the command center, big game. If something like that happened, right, I would have said something, right? You can't have that. Look, it's not the protocol, but I think ultimately, if you can correct that type of mistake, that's that's a game deciding play. So it has happened. I don't know the particulars, but there's no question that officials do get help. And if some of that's the problem with some crews do it, some don't, right, then it's not consistent. If you make it the rule and you put parameters in place and guidelines and limits, then everybody knows, okay, yeah, they got help on that face mask. It was a scoring play, and we got the call right. And I think that's where you want to be.
There definitely needs to be, a process in place. But this is the thing that blows my mind about calls like that, is that nobody is going to be upset if you just fix it by fudging the rules, right? Even if it's not in place, we'll get down the road, we'll figure out how to actually put a framework around this and be able to do this wholesale. But if somebody from New York buzzed down and fixed that play against the Vikings, literally nobody is complaining. Nobody's going, well, that was against the protocol. This is a crime against the game. This is
Rams fans.
No doubt. In that vacuum, absolutely. But what does come up then is you get other teams going, wait a minute, I got screwed in week 6. You didn't fix that one.
Right.
Or, Cincinnati, you didn't fix that one. So I think that's the slippery slope. And you just got to, that's why I think if you put it in the rule and you put the controls in place, you don't have to worry about that. Hey, sometimes they might do it, sometimes they won't. It depends how obvious it is. You just, I agree. Nobody's going to say anything if we fix the Darnold play, but then it's the expectation is, hey, if I get one, I want you to fix it, even though that's not the rule.
Yeah.
Can you describe how college operates? Because in college, they're basically reviewing every play, not for face masks, right? But for, did a guy step out of bounds, whatever it is. Is that a more efficient protocol than what the NFL has?
It's interesting because the NFL started with coach's challenge and a very limited automatic review. And college has everything is automatically reviewed. And the NFL has kind of now migrated toward more automatic reviews. And college wants to go to add more coaches challenges because it's just too much on the replay official. I like a balance. I think there's a perfect world, and I think the NFL is probably closer to it, where you scoring plays, turnovers, last 2 minutes, fourth down, turnover on downs, those types of things are automatically reviewed for just the reviewable aspects of the play. I think sometimes people assume with college that, everything's reviewed. Well, not everything. Like you said, you can't make a face mask. You can't look at holding. You can't look at non-reviewable aspects of the play. So I do think there's a balance, and the NFL is a little bit closer to making the significant plays automatically reviewed so you don't have to worry about challenges and timeouts left, but give the coaches an opportunity to challenge plays that they think are significant outside of those windows.
The only other thing I was curious about, what are the kind of consequences for officiating crews when they screw up these plays? Do they, obviously there's a system where they kind of get graded and that determines postseason assignments and those kinds of things. Is that the only consequence from a blown call? Like, players get fined after the fact for a face mask. Does a guy missing a face mask have any repercussions?
Well, it depends on, so they do get evaluated, and that evaluation process, like you said, it will decide playoff assignments, and ultimately, if you're evaluated and you're at the bottom the bottom of your position. Each official is evaluated by position, so all the back judges, all the side judges, like that. If you're in that bottom tier after 2 or 3 years, you're let go. Your job security, your postseason assignments, which that comes with financial compensation, those types of things are all married to that evaluation system. Now, there are situations where if it goes above and beyond, typically not judgment, you miss a face mask, you miss a face mask. But if officials misapply a rule, if there's a significant clock error where they're supposed to be on top of the game clock, then they could get fined. We've fined officials, game checks. We've suspended officials for really rules-based things that you can't. Judgment's judgment, and if you start finding officials for misjudgment calls, that's like finding a player for a missed block. It's just, you can't go down that path because it will never stop. But you will have situations where officials above judgment make mistakes, and they are fined, they are suspended, and that's happened.
Like screwing up the coin toss, maybe. Which has happened multiple times now in NFL history, which is fun. We had a mailbag question for you, Dean, and the question was, do you have a favorite ejection story? Does anything top Fran Tarkenton's legendary 1974 ejection when he threw the ball at a defender after scoring a touchdown? So that's a question from our listeners here.
Well, I mean, one that I always found hilarious that I wasn't involved in, I don't know if you remember, Jamie Collins was with the Lions, and he was trying to explain to the referee, and I can't remember who the referee was, what happened, and he kind of just was demonstrating, and he lowered his head, and he happened to just bump the referee, and the referee just threw him out, just was gone, out. That one always, if you YouTube that one, it's pretty funny. It's Jamie Collins. I forget what year it was. It was a couple of years ago. I do remember Mike Carey, who was a longtime referee, really good referee. Steve Tasker, who was an incredible player for the Bills, special teams, like probably one of the greatest special teams players of all time. It was his final game. This is a guy that was a Buffalo legend. Final game in Buffalo, and it's this big tribute and this big celebration, and Mike Carey throws him out of the game, throws him out of his final game. And it was just one of those deals where you're sitting there going, what it wasn't even that bad what he did. He was just kind of complaining about a call. I was like, come on, read the room, Mike. Let's not eject this guy in his final game.
Lastly, Dean, can I get an official's perspective on the mustache that I'm growing for Movember?
I heard the conversation earlier while I was waiting to come on, and I love the Manscaped products. This is not, and I'm not a paid spokesman. I use them. I wouldn't tell people necessarily that facial hair, and I'm not. You said, you made the comment, it looks like I came out of a barber shop. I'm thinking more like barber school, but that's just me.
Okay.
But I keep at it. I'm crazy about my facial hair. I like to try different things. Keep at it. You'll find something that works.
Well, the great thing is, so the plan is for every $100 I raise, I'm going to change it to something different, right? So this is the beauty, is we can keep going.
I love that. I wouldn't stick with this one very long, but I love it.
Dean, if you need more Manscaped products, Mike20 is your promo code. You can get 20% off if you're missing anything. If you need a Chairman Pro or whatever it might be. So, Dean, appreciate having you. Thanks for all the insight.
All right, guys, take care.
Take it easy. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.